fantastic lodge in Mayo, Michigan. Cherry Creek Farm is 640 acres of very scenic rolling land, which has a mixture of hardwoods, cedar swamps, and farm fields, dotted with a number of lakes and ponds. The ponds are teeming with rainbow, brown, and brook trout. Besides whitetails and fishing, Cherry Creek also offers some fantastic pheasant hunting, which we'll show you on a future show. After arriving and unpacking our gear into our home for the next 4 days, which by the way was a very comfortable log cabin, we were anxious to see the property. After a quick meeting with owner Pat Arney and our guides Dennis Marshall and Bill Cheney, we headed out to check things out. Susie and I brought both our bows and our new muzzleloaders along in hopes of a real trophy. I started with my bow as Bill Cheney and I carefully stalked around, looking for a deer sign and to check out a couple of stand sites.
Looks like a pretty good trail right here, Bill. Yeah, they come up out of this. They ended up grazing at night or in later evenings. Then from this side, they're coming up out of the swamp. And this two-track that runs here, they'll walk the two-track and there's a couple nice runs. And they'll cross it, coming into the same. So we'll get a big quality number of deer in this field at night. Okay? Let's continue on.
After finding a number of rubs and a fresh scrape, Bill and I decided to set up and do a little rattling and calling on a nearby ridge overlooking the scrape. Although trying all our calls, we couldn't get a response from an interested buck. That evening, we sat in a good-looking spot on the ground with our bow.
We're doing a little bow hunting. We've got a nice ground blind here with some sorghum and some alfalfa out in front of us. Looks like a good funnel to bring some deer through here, so it's early yet. It's about 10 to 4. Wind is perfect. Hopefully we're going to see some deer tonight. Stay with us.
The first thing we saw was this group of turkeys who were working their way through the field. They paid no attention to our blind. A few minutes later, this nice 8-point cautiously walked by. He was about 25 yards away, which was in my Oneida bow range. But being the first night and knowing there were bigger bucks, I passed. It was a difficult decision, though. Later that evening, this group of bucks passed us going to their bedding area at about 40 yards. Exciting, you bet. The following afternoon, we moved to our Ameristep penthouse blind that Susie and I set up the day before in an area that we were sure was a funnel between feeding and bedding areas. We soon found out we were right. The new Ameristep blind has both shadow guard inside as well as total scent concealment windows. Watch how good our scent is concealed as this doe checks us out at real close range. Try as she did, she couldn't see or smell us. A few minutes later, these two young deer went by, followed by a pretty nice buck and doe. As they watched us at about 40 yards, they finally walked by, within bow range, but I again passed. The next deer that showed up had a very non-typical rat, high and wide on one side and a huge single point on the other. This buck again passed within bow range. This monster buck appeared a few minutes later, and he was a real shooter, although he stayed out of bow range by about 10 or 15 yards. This big fella really got my heart beating in anticipation of a shot. We finished the night just before dark, with this big guy looking things over at about 50 yards before walking away. The following night, Susie took over hunting, and I grabbed the camera as we headed back to the same blind as the previous evening. The first thing that came through was this hen turkey with a group of 6 young ones. They were only about 20 feet from us. As Susie continued to watch, this nice buck stepped out. A few minutes later, the big guy walked away without ever offering a close enough shot.